The crystalline halls of the Zarathian palace shimmered with bioluminescent light as Princess Julia stood before the grand assembly. Her silver skin gleamed under the orbital lights, and her violet eyes held a sadness that no amount of royal composure could hide. She was the last heir of the Zarathian throne, a dying race whose numbers had dwindled to mere thousands across the galaxy for 3 cycles. Suitors had arrived from every corner of the known universe, reptilian nobles from Draxus Prime, aquatic princes from the water worlds of Vesh. Even the proud warrior chiefs of the Crag Empire had bent their knees before her. Each had been carefully selected by the High Council, each genetically compatible according to the ancient bioscans, each capable of producing the hybrid offspring that might save her species. And Julia had rejected them all. Your Highness, Council Elder Vexter spoke, his ancient voice crackling through his translation device. The genetic clock is running out. You must choose. Our civilization depends on it. Julia's delicate fingers traced the edge of her ceremonial throne. I understand the stakes, Elder, but I will not bind myself to someone whose eyes look at me as a breeding vessel rather than a person. I am more than a womb for the future of Zarathia. The council chamber erupted in whispers. Such defiance from royalty was unprecedented. Her mother, the late queen, would have never dared speak so boldly. But Julia was different. She had spent years studying alien cultures, learning their languages, immersing herself in their philosophies. She had seen how other species loved, genuinely and freely, without the cold calculation of genetic compatibility charts. Then our race dies with you, Vexter said flatly. Before Julia could respond, the massive doors of the council chamber burst open. Guards rushed forward, but stopped when they saw the visitor, a human male, disheveled and breathing heavily, clearly having run a great distance. I apologize for the intrusion, the human said in perfectly accented Zarathian, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. My name is Oscar Chen. I'm a xenobiologist from Earth, stationed at the research outpost on Zarathio 3. Julia leaned forward, intrigued despite herself. She had heard of humans, the curious species from a small blue planet in the outer territories, relatively new to galactic politics. They were considered unremarkable by most advanced civilizations, neither particularly strong nor long-lived, lacking any extraordinary abilities. How dare you interrupt these proceedings? Vexter thundered, but Oscar's eyes were fixed on Julia, and in them she saw something she hadn't seen in any of her previous suitors, genuine concern. Not for a dynasty or a species, but for her. I've been monitoring the selection process, Oscar continued, addressing Julia directly now. I've read the genetic reports, studied your biology. The council is wrong. You don't need an alien noble with 97% compatibility. You need someone who understands that love and partnership come before genetic optimization. A human. Vexter laughed, a harsh, rattling sound. Humans are genetically incompatible with Zereth. The bioscans would never approve such a match. You waste our time. Oscar pulled a datapad from his jacket. Actually, I've spent the last 6 months researching Zarathian human genetic compatibility. With modern gene therapy and careful medical supervision, it's not only possible but potentially more viable than any of the matches you've proposed. The genetic diversity a human partner could provide might be exactly what the Zarathian species needs. He walked forward, and the guards moved to intercept him, but Julia raised her hand. Let him approach. Oscar climbed the steps to her throne and knelt, but not in the formal way the other suitors had. He knelt as an equal, showing respect, not a subject showing subservience. Princess Julia, he said softly, I've watched you from afar for months. I've seen you walk through the gardens at night when you think no one is watching. I've heard you sing the old Zarathian lullabies to the children in the lower city. I've read your thesis on interspecies cultural exchange. It's brilliant, by the way. And I've fallen in love with you, not because of what you represent, but because of who you are. Julia's violet eyes widened. In all the formal courtships, no one had ever mentioned her writings, her charity work, her midnight solitary walks. They had only seen her crown. You know nothing of our customs, Vexter protested. This is madness. I know that Princess Julia plays the crystal harp when she's sad, Oscar replied, still looking at Julia. I know she speaks 7 languages and dreams of opening the first interspecies university. I know she sneaks food to the refugees at the Eastern Gate. I know her favorite color is the deep purple of your planet's sunset. And I know she deserves someone who sees her, truly sees her, not just her bloodline. Tears welled in Julia's eyes, a rare display of emotion for a Zarathian royal. She stood and descended the steps, stopping directly in front of Oscar. Why would you do this? She whispered. You're risking your career, possibly your life. barging in here. Oscar smiled, warm and genuine, because someone had to step forward and tell you that you're worth more than a genetic compatibility percentage. Because in all my travels across this galaxy, I've never met anyone as extraordinary as you. And because, Princess Julia, you deserve to choose love, not duty. The council chamber fell silent. Julia turned to Elder Vexter. Run the genetic analysis on Oscar Chen, she commanded, and while you're at it, run psychological compatibility tests, cultural alignment, assessments, and every other measure of partnership that doesn't reduce us to DNA sequences. Your Highness, that is my decision, Julia said firmly. Then she turned back to Oscar, and for the first time in 3 cycles, she smiled. And if the tests prove favorable, Dr. Chen, perhaps you'll join me for dinner. I'd like to discuss your research on genetic diversity, and perhaps get to know the man who saw me when everyone else only saw a princess. Oscar bowed, his eyes shining with hope. It would be my honor, Your Highness. As the council erupted in debate and the guards escorted Oscar to the medical wing for testing, Julia returned to her throne. But she didn't sit. Instead, she stood tall, looking out at her advisors with newfound resolve. No alien male had selected the little princess, but a human had stepped forward not to claim her but to see her. And in that moment, Julia realized that perhaps salvation for her species wouldn't come from perfect genetic matches, but from the courage to choose with one's heart. The future of Zarathia, she decided, would be built not on the cold calculations of survival, but on the radical notion that even princesses deserved love.